I'll be honest, when it comes to my knowledge of both Elvis Presley and the Nixon administration, it pretty much begins and ends with songs like Hound Dog or Heartbreak Hotel and the Watergate scandal, respectively. So I'm not going to be really looking at this film in terms of how historically accurate it is, because by the film's own admission, there isn't a complete record of Elvis's meeting with President Richard Nixon, aside from the photo that was taken at the White House. So instead, I'm going to be looking at how this film functions as a narrative film and set aside any and all historical baggage unless it actually relates to the story being told here. And besides, I think Leonard Maltin put it best when he said that you shouldn't be getting your history from the movies. Elvis and Nixon tells the story of what led up to the meeting between the President of the United States, Richard Nixon, and the King of Rock and Roll, Elvis Presley, and is presented in somewhat of an absurdist style, almost kind of like it's a feature-length adaptation of a joke. I mention this because there are quite a few events in this film that leave you thinking, this can't seriously be happening, which works because that's often what a lot of the supporting characters are saying, where they're basically saying, this can't seriously be happening. I mean, how would you feel if you saw a well-known celebrity suddenly walk into the DEA and basically said, I don't like all these drugs and stuff going on, I want to become an undercover federal agent? I mean, what would you say? Structurally, I feel it's more akin to an episode of a sitcom like Louie than a feature film. You're just seeing a series of events, but it doesn't really follow the three-act structure. It's basically just Elvis and his posse messing around in Washington, D.C., while two White House staffers are struggling to get the meeting set up. The film as a whole doesn't really have a lot of teeth to it, but personally I think that's probably the film's biggest strength, as it doesn't take itself too seriously. I mean, there are some moments where they try to inject some heart and sentimentality to it, but in my opinion, those are probably the weakest moments of the film, as those bouts of sentimentality just feel like they come out of nowhere, almost kind of like they're forced in. As for the acting, we have some quality talent here. Kevin Spacey gives us a very entertaining version of Richard Nixon. Yeah, it's pretty much a caricature of Nixon, but for a film that's a comedy, that's kind of what it calls for, and so it's very entertaining to watch as he kind of plays this really grumbly, irritable old man who is the leader of the free world. And at the same time, Michael Shannon also gives us a very entertaining take on Elvis Presley, who's basically in this film a celebrity who is well-intentioned, but is clearly detached from reality and almost lives in his own little world. Honestly, the acting and the writing are probably the best parts of the film, as everything more or less plays out akin to a stage play. That said, I don't think this film is going to do well in theaters, because there's not a lot to this film that justifies seeing it in theaters. I mean, if you're watching it on DVD or via streaming, you're not really losing that much from the experience, and it actually may even be better for it in some cases. When it comes to the remaining technical aspects of the film, well, they did put a lot of effort in recreating the 1960s look in what few locations they had. However, some of the blocking just didn't really feel particularly inspired. It was mostly utilitarian, which is often the case for a lot of comedies, and some of the way that the scene was framed and the way the actors were blocked made for some awkward looking cinematography on a larger screen. If I were watching it on a computer screen or a TV screen, it probably wouldn't feel as weird, because there's a lot of close-ups, some really intimate shots that on a big screen just makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But that might just be me. Overall, this is an enjoyable film, but it's not going to make any waves at the box office, and it's not going to become one of those comedies that's often referenced or quoted. It's just a simple, well-written comedy with really skilled actors playing the parts, and not really much more than that. I mean, personally speaking, I felt that this was a good palate cleanser after some of the big budget films I've had to sit through over the past couple of weeks. So if you're like me, and you're getting a little bit sick of some of the films that are based solely on spectacle, then I recommend checking this film out. I mean, if you're seeing it as a matinee, it's a nice afternoon diversion. But that's pretty much all I can really recommend it for, so if you want to see it in theaters, well, go to like first showing of the day on the weekend, or an afternoon if you're needing a break, or wait till it comes on DVD or available on streaming. I know this was partially produced by Amazon, so no doubt you'll be able to stream it through Amazon Video. All of that said, Elvis and Nixon gets a 4 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.